Farai Mubaiwa, who is the Youth Employment Services Chief Partnership Officer, as well as Nicola Galombek, who is the founder and board member of lobby group Harambe. Good evening to both of you ladies. Thanks very much for your time. And I'm going to start with you, Farai, if I may. Just your thoughts from what was announced today and from, what Dr. Philip has just taken through.
Very good evening, and thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. I think that what Dr. Philip has shared is so important, looking at what are the initiatives that government is implementing. And I think what was announced today highlights just how serious the unemployment crisis is that we face. We are in the thick of an unemployment crisis, and you are now seeing initiatives from government, from the private sector, from NGOs who are saying, how do we deal with the thick of the unemployment crisis? How do we create multiple pathways for young people in our country to be able to develop critical skills to enhance their employability and for them to be able to participate very actively within the economy? So I think as a young person myself, it is not a discouraging situation that we have in light of the various interventions that are taking place, such as the Pathway Management Network, such as the Presidential Employment Stimulus, the work that's being done by YES, by Harambee, by the NYDA. All these partners are collaborating for us to ensure that we don't see such devastating unemployment stats in our country again, and to ensure that this youthful population that we have is upskilled, is empowered, and is economically active.
Nicola, from your vantage point?
Good evening, and it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for the opportunity. I think this has been in the midst of the COVID devastation, an incredibly positive and exciting development. I think that, as Dr. Philip said, it's compounded the problem, but it has also demonstrated the opportunities. I think that what we need to all acknowledge is that government stipended programs are an absolutely critical part of the solution. But we need to ensure, and I think we can, and we're already seeing the opportunity to ensure that young people use these opportunities to pathway themselves to either to being self-reliant in enterprise, to upskill themselves for growth sectors in the economy. Digital and tech sectors have grown even through the COVID period. So has agriculture. And there are a number of sectors that, despite the low growth in our economy, need the talent and skills of young people. And so the public employment programs and the scale up that has happened during this period really provides us with a platform to now, the National Pathway Management Network creates a platform for those young people to progress, to move from these opportunities to their next opportunities, and for another cohort of young people to be absorbed into their first opportunities. And I think just to reinforce what Farai said, when the DBE opportunity that's been mentioned was opened up, we saw a spike of 150,000 young people applying in a single day for these opportunities. Young people out there are hungry for opportunity. That is the thing that they most want, opportunity to earn. And what we have seen through the stimulus program and the many other initiatives that are happening both in the private sector and between the private, public, and social sectors, is we're seeing that when young people are given opportunities, they really make good of those opportunities. They can transition from a government stipended opportunity into a self-employment enterprise opportunity. And we also see that even with an income from a self enterprise that a young person is running, if they can bring home 1,500 Rand a month, they already start making contributions to their households. They're putting themselves into further learning. They're funding the education of their children. They're contributing to household food security, both through their activities as well as through the income they're bringing in. And the sort of positive psychological impact of that on our young people, just feeling like they can be positive contributors, feeling engaged, and being able to realize their talent. I mean, the impact of that on our society really can't be measured. It is so important.
Now, Dr. Philip, Farai, as point about the seriousness of our unemployment crisis is something that cannot be overemphasized, but also the point that Nicole is making about upskilling for growth sectors, which I want us to zoom in for a few seconds, particularly because part of our unemployment problem has to do with the fact that there is a big skills mismatch where you have a lot of people, graduates and so on, but who aren't, skilled or trained in the areas that are critical and can actually absorb a lot more young people, precisely because that's what the economy needs. Now, is there a deliberateness about what you are doing, that ensures that, that particular problem is being addressed simultaneously? In other words, while we are getting young people to contribute to household incomes, to educate, their own children, as Nicole was saying, at the same time, we're making sure that they begin to acquire, the skills that the economy actually needs.
Yes. I think that one of the things we have to recognize is that in South Africa we have multiple interlocking problems. And we need, when we look at solutions and design solutions, we need to design them in a way that is also interlocking. The employment stimulus is about an immediate response to crisis in a context in which the private sector has taken real strain through the pandemic, in which unemployment was already high and in which markets are currently unable to absorb labour at the scale that is required. So we need a multi-pronged approach. On the one hand, of course, plan A is that the economy recovers, that it develops in ways that is able to create employment on the scale required, and that on the supply side, people are skilled for the jobs that are emerging. That is a huge part of policy. But we can't wait for all those parts of the puzzle to be in place before we act on unemployment. And so the stimulus has to do a number of different things at the same time. It has to create opportunities for people whose skills don't skill them for the jobs that are currently in the labour market, limited as those are. It needs to be able to absorb those people. It also needs to position people that do have some skills with work experience. We know that the single biggest barrier to entry in labour markets is actually lack of work experience. And that's why in the stimulus, we've actually put so much emphasis on the importance of the quality of the work experience in these jobs, that it is meaningful work, that it provides people with real work experience. It gives them experience of teamwork, of time management, of accountability, of delivery. And in the process is equipping them to play an important role in the wider labour market when the opportunity to transition arises. There are also lots of opportunities for actual skilling within the process. So, for example, one of the programs in phase 1 was with the DTIC. It was placing people, it was an incentive to place people in the global business services sector, precisely because that is one of the growth sectors. Within the schools program, for example, there was digital training done on a range of different areas that would equip participants better for the labour market thereafter. There were a number of graduate programs that gave graduates applied experience in their area of expertise. And we've actually seen many snapped up into the labour market. So I think the important thing is to be operating at these different levels and recognising that some problems we we can't solve right now, even though we try to build in strategies to do so into the approach.
Farai, if, as Dr. Philip is saying, phase one was all about this immediate response to the crisis of unemployment in the country, where then do you think phase two should now go?
Thanks for the question. And, I think that Dr. Philip is absolutely right that these processes and these interventions that we have to definitely run in parallel. So yes, phase one was about how do we address the youth unemployment crisis that we have immediately. But at the same time, let's also look at how do we then address some policy reforms which could ensure that we are having more people who are engaged, who are economically active. And I think what's so important, especially as we look at phase two, is to look at what was the feedback that we received from young people? How do we build on that feedback? And how do we ensure that the programs that we have are making young people employable? And I think what's been really exciting is that Youth Capital, they did a survey with young people who benefited from the education assistant jobs. And I just want to share with you on this platform some of the feedback that young people gave, because I think this is really exciting and it speaks to just how effective the intervention was and how, since we know it works, how do we massify this? How do we scale it up to ensure that more young people get this opportunity? So from the sample who Youth Capital engaged with, we found that, that 42% of young people who are part of this program actually had an interest within the education space. We know that 98% of schools said that this was such an important intervention to have, and that if they could extend the contract period of these young people, they actually would. And I think what's even more significant is that 29% of young people said that this program, especially when we're looking at the teacher assistants, albeit a bit short for them, gave them a good work experience. And I think that is so critical. I mean, we've discussed how we do have a skills shortage within our country. And if we can create as many pathways for young people to gain these skills, then that is absolutely critical. Yeah, I think what's also important for us to recognize is that, as we do have phase two of the intervention, we're also looking at the different pathways which exist for young people. So if we're speaking specifically about the teacher assistant pathways, there are also pathways within Harambee, for example, looking at the hustle economy. There are also pathways within the NYDA, looking at how we can support young people who run their own businesses. There are also pathways within YES where we give young people a 12-month quality work experience, and that's funded through mobilizing the private sector. So I think as we're looking at phase two, what's really exciting for me is how, yes, we are responding to a crisis immediately, but in parallel, we are also looking at what are some sustainable long-term initiatives for us to ensure that we don't see such a crisis again? And this links back to what Nicola had mentioned about how do we place unemployed young people into your high-growth sectors, such as your BPO sector, your agri and agri-processing, digital and ICT, your green energy sector. And I think many of the organizations who are involved within the youth unemployment ecosystem are doing this work. Mm-hmm. The third layer would then be how do we look at policy reforms to get even more young people involved and very much economically active. And I think just one other thing to share as well is that, it's so important to just re-emphasize the point that Dr. Philip made, that before COVID-19 hit, we were already in an unemployment crisis. COVID-19 exacerbated this crisis, and the various initiatives now are ensuring that we don't see such crisis happening again, and that we are creating as many pathways for unemployed youth as possible. And I think the more pathways young people see, the more skills we get, the more empowered we become, the more we contribute to our households, the more economically active we become sustainably.
Nicola, from your perspective, where should we go now?
Well, I mean, I think just adding to what Farai has said, I think one of the important features of the presidential youth employment intervention is that it really creates a platform for proper coordination of all of this activity. And most importantly, if you look at the youth.mobi, the SA youth.mobi platform, it creates a single platform for young people to see all of these opportunities, to have a single point of entry and a place where all of these opportunities, these different kinds of opportunities, and most importantly, these pathways, the next step, can be visible to young people and where they can be supported to move themselves forward. So, I mean, I think that platform, young people and the opportunities in the economy all being on the SA Youth.mobi platform is a really important piece of the puzzle in this next phase, so that we make sure that, as you know, that the employment stimulus is not a dead end for young people. And we also, as Farai said, make sure that as the economy opens up, the private sector and the social sector organizations also are really scaling up the opportunities for young people. And I do want to say that and reinforce, I think, a point that you were making, which is that even through the difficult period that we are in, there are growth sectors, and those growth sectors need skills, and they actually need skills that our young people can acquire quite easily and fairly efficiently if we are clear and determined to create appropriate demand-led skilling opportunities for young people, not necessarily long and inappropriate qualifications that don't match to the needs of the economy, but shorter, very demand-led, very fit-for-purpose skilling programs that can be massified. If you look at the digital and tech sector, we all know that sector has grown during COVID, and it's not just the sector itself. Across the whole economy, and in fact across government, digital jobs are emerging. There are existing vacancies. There are great opportunities to bring more global services jobs to South Africa, but we have to accelerate the skilling of our young people. And I think that Harambee, working in partnership with several industry associations, several government departments coordinated by the presidency, have all come together, for example, in the Digital Work Accelerator, a joint initiative between government, industry, and social partners to say, there is an opportunity here. There is an opportunity to create jobs for young people. There's an opportunity to upskill young people quickly for the jobs that are just going to grow and grow and grow in this economy and globally. And it's that kind of energy that this next phase has to be characterized by. Compacting across social partners, focusing on the opportunity zones, and really mobilizing and celebrating the talent of young people, and just tackling the blockages, just going over them, through them, and doing whatever we need to do. Where there's regulation that's getting in the way, let's deal with it. Where there's qualifications that are getting in the way, let's deal with it. Where there's funding that's being misdirected, let's direct it appropriately. But it's that kind of energy that we're going to need in this next phase to really say we can't sustain a fiscally employed youth population. That is not sustainable, right? We have to grow the jobs in our economy. We have to grow what Farai calls the hustle economy, where young people are making a living, selling goods and services in their communities and able to generate livelihoods for themselves.
We've run out of time, but I am going to ask you, Dr. Philip, to, within a minute, just take us through some of the salient features of Phase 2, for which 11 billion rands has already been allocated.
So Phase 2 extends the successful programs from Phase 1, but introduces a lot of new programs too. And a lot of them respond to precisely the kinds of things that have been raised here, including support to demand-led digital training through the Presidential Youth Employment Intervention, and the stimulus is supporting the Pathway Management Network that we've heard a lot about here, and that is a crucial intervention in the youth employment space. But some of the exciting programs in phase 2, number one is the Social Employment Fund. This is part of the social and solidarity economy that is part of the DTIC strategy. And it is going to support 50,000 jobs that support organizations that are engaged in work for the common good in communities. Now, we know that there are many organizations that are doing all kinds of work that make a difference at community level. This fund is intended to support them. And the purpose of that is to recognize that it's not just the public sector that can create forms of public employment. We need to partner with organizations beyond the public sector to do so. So the Social Employment Fund will be launched by the Industrial Development Corporation, and we're looking to seeing really innovative work coming out of that. Things like placemaking, urban agriculture, early childhood development, community safety, gender-based violence, initiatives that oppose gender-based violence, and those kinds of things. So that is a big thrust in phase 2. Another big program is the City Support Program, where all the metros have been asked to come forward with proposals. And what we're seeing there are things like partnerships between a metro and the private sector to create digital jobs that digitize the records of the city and use that as a platform to get participants work ready for the private sector. And that is happening in partnership with the private sector. The cities are also doing things like urban agriculture, innovation in waste, and programs like that. Okay. There's a program with COCTA that is about working with 25 municipalities to support innovation in waste management and recycling, to find solutions to the problems of waste that we have. So we have a range of new programs. There are 15 in all, but I'll leave it there. Thanks, William.
Okay, I'm sure we'll be able to explore those over the next few months. On this program, we take the issue of unemployment very, very seriously. That's why we try never to miss an opportunity to talk about it, as was the case today on the back of that report back by cabinet ministers and officials like Dr. Philip on how far they have gone in implementing the presidential employment stimulus. Special thanks to Dr. Philip as well as Farai, Mubaiwa and Nicola Galombek. But we also focus on this program on the body politic, and that's what we're going to do next. After the break, what's the embattled ANC Eastern Cape chairperson and provincial premier Oscar Mabuyane trying to do, interdicting the Hawks? Embattled Eastern Cape Premier Oscar Mabuyane is pulling all the stops to avoid being probed by the Hawks on his alleged corrupt dealings. Today he approached the Bisho High Court. It all follows Public Protector Busiwa Mkhwebana's report implicating Mabuyane and Public Works MEC Babalo Matigizela in acts of corruption involving funds meant for Winnie Matigizela Mandela's memorial service.
Mabuyane argues that he has no case to answer as there aren't any specific charges against him. But legal experts are of the view that his argument does not hold water and has no legal grounds to stop the investigation.
The investigation is a process. He will be given an opportunity to state his case once facts have been gathered. So for me, the most important thing is that he must just wait for the process to unfold, answer the questions that are posed to him, and if at the end of the day then he is charged, then he will still have a case, an opportunity to answer in court. So his rights are protected. I also doubt very much that the court would go to an extent of really interdicting the Hawks from doing their work.
Mabuyane questions an investigation by the Hawks from the Free State, but the Hawks see nothing wrong with that.
From time to time, the Hawks investigates cases across provincial borders. It has taken place in various instances such as the Durban Waste investigation, the Nafis Modak investigation, the Eskom prepaid electricity fraud, where 30 people were arrested in Gauteng by investigators from the Free State. From time to time, the national head will also assign investigators from different provinces to probe cases that aren't necessarily situated in their own provinces or even their offices are based.
In a statement, the ANC has indicated that the MEC for Public Works, who is also implicated, will apply for a legal review. Lubabalo Tata, SABC News, Eastern Cape.
Meanwhile, suspended ANC Secretary General Ace Magashule has denied Oscar Mabuyane's claims that he is the one unleashing the Hawks on him.
Are you using the Hawks to get to Mabuyane? Is that even possible?
I have no connection with any Hawks.
Well, we're going to take a quick ad break. After the break, we'll get some informed opinion from Advocate Ntuse Libebe on the attendant legal issues around this particular story. Don't go away.
The Northern Cape, its people, as diverse as its landscape. We bring you these stories.
We
amplify the voices of all cultures, and it's your stories we don't take for granted.
We traverse South Africa's largest province regularly, bring you news of its political landscape, its adverse weather, and how the largely poor and mostly rural people survive.
Now, we not only bring you news of their latest discoveries and how and why they work, but we also put it in a language so that you can understand why it matters to you.
We bring you stories of substance and detail.
The voices of the people are what matter to us. Their plight is our concern.
We sit in meetings dissecting stories. You can trust us as your source of news.
I'm Tapelo Khobuswane and I bring you material of high quality.
Camera work is our pride in driving great video content, and it must be flawless.
Trust us to bring you information on what matters to you.
I'm here at the clinic in Extension 2 to get tested for COVID. Body pains, red eyes, the flu that I have been having so long, so it forced me to come to clinic, and so it got me where I am. First, I didn't believe in COVID. Then now with the rates of death going up every day, having funerals, until someone in my family, in my street, everyone affected with the COVID and just dying the next day, boom, dead.
Well, The Week Ahead is a show that airs between 1 and 2 o'clock on SABC News Channel. The show's been extended to an hour. We're going to continue to bring you rolling coverage of what is unfolding every step of the way from our different provinces, different communities, different metros, different areas, parties and independent candidates in full swing campaigning and electioneering ahead of the local government elections. Thank you for joining us. Catch The Week Ahead with myself, Liesl Wilson, on SABC News Channel between 1 and 2 o'clock on Sundays.
Well, let's get some informed opinion on that Oscar Mabuyane story now from Advocate Ntuse Libebe. Advocates, good evening. Thanks very much for your time. I hope that line is now stable. Oscar Mabuyane is arguing that he has no case to answer because there aren't specific charges against him. Does he have a point from a legal standpoint?
Good evening, I'm sorry for connection where I am. I think connection is also bad. But anyway, from the legal point of view, you must know to start with that we have what we call the Combating of Corrupt Activities Act, Prevention of Combating Corrupt Activities Act, especially that gave birth to the Hawks to investigate any types of corruption that has been reported to them, either a corruption committed by any citizen, despite of your political position, the Hawks has a responsibility to investigate and submit their investigation to the NPA to prosecute. Here, with regard to the case of Mr. Mboyana, there was an investigation which was conducted. You will agree with me, Vuyo, from back then in 2016. The public protector investigated the allegation which was reported to the office that there was a corrupt activities from Mr. Mboyana with regard to the funds which were allocated for memorial service of Mama Wedima Mandela. And from those findings, they found that there is a certain amount of 450,000, which he benefited from that. That's evidence. Now, the public protector is submitting that kind of information to the Hawks to do what we call a final leg of investigation and to submit to the NPA for the director to give a go-ahead to prosecute. So you can't stop it. You can't stop it and say, no, you don't have the power or a leg to investigate me. Legally speaking from Section 34 of the Combating or Prevention of Corrupt Activities, it gives the Hawks powers to investigate. And the issue, because I've realized they speak about the issue of jurisdiction. That's no, it's from the Free State office. It doesn't matter. You go from the jurisdiction operation of the Hawks. The Act is very clear that they have the task to investigate any corrupt activities within South Africa.
Now, Advocate, I want us to listen very carefully to the explanation that was given by his lawyer last night on our sister program, The Globe. Take a listen.
The basis of us approaching the court is that the Hawks are refusing to give our client the necessary information in order for him to answer the questions that they are imposing on him. Now we are reviewing that decision to investigate our client. They have a right to investigate, but our client is also entitled to his constitutional rights. He has set in motion his constitutional rights, and the Hawks also have to meet him halfway to provide him with the necessary information that he has requested from them. Remember, there was an agreement between my client and the Hawks, wherein Hawks agreed to provide him with the necessary information in order for him to answer such questions. That did not happen. They did not provide him with the necessary information. Now they want to go ahead to charge him without having given him that chance to answer the question. Hence, our client now is approaching the court to say, no, give me the information first so that I can answer.
Advocate?
Yes, bro.
Does he have a point? Does he have a leg to stand on in terms of what we've just heard from his lawyer?
You see, this is sound wanting from his point of view. You see, there is no leg to stand. I like the part when the legal representative stated it categorically that the Hawks, they have the right to investigate.
Yes.
And indeed, and Mubaiwa has the right in terms of the Constitution to give his side of the story. So you can't say, stop investigating me, give me this and this and this before you can investigate me. No, it doesn't work like that. They have a constitutional right enshrined from the Constitution as one of Chapter 6A establishment to do their work. Why is so difficult for Mr. Mboyana to allow the Hawks to finalize this leg of investigation? And he answered these things in court. You see, if indeed there's no case, then the NPA will reject, will issue a certificate of non-prosecution. So there's nothing to hide. There's no leg from the legal point of view for Mr. Mboyana to stand.
Let's say, let's say he does indeed, or there was this agreement or understanding between Mr. Mabuyane and the Hawks that they would provide him with the necessary information in order for him to answer such questions. The fact that did not happen then means that, the Hawks, I suppose you can infer that he's saying, well, the Hawks did not honor their part of the agreement, so they can't then continue. Is that legal? Is that something he can use as a defense?
The point of departure in terms of the law of evidence on how to get evidence, there is what you call questions. The Hawks will formulate questions and they will send them to either the legal representative of Mr. Mboyane or to Mboyane himself. That is the standard procedure in terms of the law of evidence. Those questions are specific time frames to respond to those questions. If indeed they've sent the questions to him or that he's still waiting for them to send questions to him for him to respond, then that is a different issue. But here, the Hawks have information which has been given to them, and they want to investigate. And after investigation is where the process of formulating questions will come in. So you can't stop at the entrance. So no, don't enter. Don't investigate me. You understand? Bring this. No. You must allow them, and they will formulate those questions. They will send to you. Then answer the question. From my legal point of view, it doesn't stand and it doesn't prevent the Hawks from doing their work. I will go to an extent of giving a precedent. There is a High Court. There is a Constitutional Court decision of 2014 of Helen Student Foundation and the Glenista, where they challenge the President and Minister of Police about the operation of the then Scorpion, now the Hawks. That in a country whereby we find ourselves that corruption is escalating, we need to come up with procedures and to empower these institutions to do their work without fear of failure. There's nothing wrong for Mr. Mboyane to allow the Hawks, if indeed he's innocent, to allow the Hawks to do their work. The work that it has been entrusted to them in terms of the Prevention of Combating of Corrupt Activities Act.
Okay. Advocate, that's where we're going to leave it this evening. Thank you so much for your time and insights this evening. And that, of course, is Advocate Ntuse Libebe. Moving on to the campaign trail now, ANC members' dissatisfaction with candidate lists continues to haunt party leaders. Party Deputy Secretary General Jesse Duarte says the ANC will defend itself should those who are unhappy about the party's nomination processes take it to court. She was reacting to threats made by some disgruntled ANC members at the Klerksdorp-based Matlosana local municipality in the northwest, where she was campaigning today.
Our demands to the ANC is that the ANC must take under oath, sign under oath to say indeed they will go for the by-elections after the votes. The second thing is that we want the candidate that was imposed to write a resignation letter to the ANC with immediate effect.
In the Northwest, the habit of the people who don't get their ways to take the ANC to court, they welcome. We will be there to defend the ANC. The Elections Committee, led by Comrade Kgalema Motlanthe, has undertaken that after the elections, they will come back and deal with all the disputes.
The African Christian Democratic Party earlier today marched to the Constitutional Court against what it calls mandatory COVID-19 vaccination. Party leader Reverend Kenneth Meshwe has accused the governing ANC of bringing back apartheid. He says he's disappointed about what he calls government's plans to make the COVID-19 vaccination mandatory. SABC reporter Yolisa Njamela has more.
Led by party leader Kenneth Meshwe, hundreds of ACDP supporters marched from the Johannesburg CBD to the Constitutional Court. Armed with posters and banners that express their views about the COVID-19 vaccination drive, the protesters marched against what they say is government's plan to make the COVID-19 vaccine mandatory. They say they're not against vaccination, merely pro-choice. Government has on many occasions emphasized that it does not intend on making the COVID-19 vaccination compulsory by law. But according to the ACDP, it's really just a matter of time.
They are forcing us. They want to force us. And we say no, 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 no. No. Are they gods?
Meshwe told his supporters that should the government officially introduce a policy that mandates citizens to vaccinate against COVID-19, this would mean that South Africa is regressing to the apartheid days.
What government is trying to do, they are reminding us of apartheid. They are reminding us of what? Do you want apartheid back? You want apartheid back? Now government is saying, without mandatory vaccine, particularly a vaccine certificate, you will not enter some places. That is apartheid. ACDP is fighting for your freedom to choose what goes into your body.
The party leadership handed over a memorandum of demands to a Justice and Constitutional Services representative. Some of their demands include calling on government to review the decision on vaccine passport. The passport is meant to be used as proof of vaccination for various purposes and events.
I'm certain that all of us that have lived under apartheid do not want to carry any kind of tompas. And I think that this statement has been affirmed. The president has said this is a voluntary process. People have a choice, and he has said that.
ACDP has given government 14 days to respond to their demands. Yulisa Njamela for SABC News in Johannesburg.
And that's all we had time for this evening. Do join us again tomorrow evening, 8 p.m. sharp. Have a good night.